Hi, welcome to this lecture of biomathematics. We have been discussing the idea of functions. In the last few lectures, we got introduced to many different kinds of functions that are generally used in different contexts in biology. In this lecture, we will discuss functions and its derivatives. We will just learn one or two functions more and then go to this idea of derivatives. So, the idea that you will learn in this lecture is the idea of derivative. We will discuss what a derivative is when we reach that point. But before discussing the derivative, we have to just see one more last part, very short section about functions. So, we have seen many functions like y equal to x, y equal to x square, y equal to x cube and all that. And we also said that function is nothing but a relation between y and x. So, that is what we define as function, and we saw many functions like y equal to m x plus c, which was a straight line, y is equal to k x square, which was a quadratic function, which was a slope like function, y is equal to e power x, exponential function, y is equal to sin x and cos x, which are periodic functions which repeat. And we said that many physical quantities can be represented by these functions, and like those things like which periodically repeat, like seasons for example, or anything that periodically repeat can be written as some combination of sin x and cos x. And we saw that the bacterial growth is some sort of an exponential function, this is 2 power x. So, all these mathematical functions we learned so far are useful in understanding different biological, different experimental situations or different natural phenomena. When we learn about all this natural phenomena, and if you want to express, if you want to tell somebody this, the things that we observe in this phenomena or in these experiments, as we learned in the first, we said in the first class, all this mathematical functions is some way of precisely quantitatively telling someone what is happening. If something is periodically repeating, if you say this is repeating like sin x, or repeating like cos x, or repeating like a combination of sin x and cos x, is very precisely telling how exactly it is repeating. And when you say that something is moving like a linear function, y is equal to k x, we are very precisely telling the way things change. Like we had seen some examples of molecular motors walking along microtubule and the position, how does the position changes with time and so on. So, all these examples we learned so far, the examples of different functions, all can be applied in different contexts. We will come back to that, but the immediate aim of this course is to get you familiarized with all these functions and then go and apply in this wherever it is needed. So, we will keep discussing examples, but we will also learn the technical information, the mathematical techniques that is needed for you to understand a physical phenomena in a much better way. So, see, we learn many functions like e power x and 2 power x. So, like let me just draw here that we had e power x which look like this, and similarly 2 power x which also look something like this. So, this is e power x and 2 power x. The bacterial growth, sorry, this is no. So, just 2 power x. So, all these functions which basically we learned so far are examples represent many natural phenomena. For example, 2 power x represents the bacterial growth. Now, let us just learn another function. So, let us have a look at this graph. So, this function is y is equal to 10 power x. There is a reason why I say this function, it is not randomly. I will come to this why we learn this function. So, the function is y equal to 10 power x, and as you see in the graph, it is a 10 power x. So, this is also an exponential function. This is x is in the exponent. So, 10 power something. So, this increases very rapidly, as you can see here, as this whenever this increased by 1 or 2, this x went from 1 to 2, the y went from 10 to 100. So, this is increasing rapidly, and this is increasing much faster than e power x. So, what is plotted on the right hand side is a comparison of 10 power x and e power x. If you look this, you can see that e power x grows slower compared to 10 power x. 10 power x grows faster than e power x. So, this information will be useful at some point, but just to understand that if you plot 10 power x is an exponential function, it increases very fast, and we will come back and see why this is important. So, one more function is 10 power x, and now we learn many functions like y is equal to some functions we learn from the beginning, y is equal to x square, y is equal to x cube, and so on. So, we had something like y equal to x square, and for every x value we had a y value. So, now if you have such a function, you can ask this question. So, what we had, if we know the x value, the corresponding y value is given by square of it. So, if this was 3, this would be 3 square equal to 9. Now, if you know the y value, how will we calculate the corresponding x value? Let us say you know this value, how will you calculate the corresponding x value? So, you could ask this question that given a y value, how to get the x value. So, let us have this look at here some examples. So, the red, green and blue curves are y equal to x is red, y equal to x square is green, y equal to x cube is blue. We have seen this plot in the previous lectures. So, if let us say in any of this case, you know the y value, and how will you calculate the x value? So, let us take the example of y equal to x square. To calculate x, we will find the square root of y. This is square root, and is also written as y power half. So, we saw this square root function last time. So, if we know the y values, let us say the y value is 4, the corresponding x value is square root of 4, which is 2. So, similarly, if we know that our function is y equal to x cube, and if we know the y value, to calculate the corresponding x value, we will find the cube root. So, this symbol is cube root with a root with 3 here, this is cube root or y power 1 by 3. For example, let us look at this blue curve. When the y value is 8, the corresponding x value, if you draw a line from here and down, the corresponding y value is 2. So, we know that, so if y is equal to x cube and we know that y is equal to 8, then x is, to calculate x, we have to find cubic root of 8, which is 8 power 1 by 3, which is 2. So, this is how we calculate, given a y value, this is how we calculate x value. So, for simple functions like x square, x cube, x power 4, etc., you can calculate the root. You can calculate as the square root, cubic root. So, the root of a function is basically given a y value, how do we calculate the x value. Now, you could ask this question, if it is an exponential function or a 10 power x function or any exponential function, how do we do this? So, let us look the next slide and ask this slide asks this question. If you have a curve which is 10 power x, which is shown in red here, given a y value which is 80, how do we know what is the x value? The corresponding x value for this 10 power x. So, or if you know the y value, what will be the corresponding x value for e power x? This is not square root. So, this function which is used to calculate the x value given the y value is called log or logarithmic function, which you all have heard of logarithmic functions, and it is used very often in different contexts. So, let us look at this slide. The next slide shows y equal to 10 power x in the blue as a blue curve here. So, the blue curve is y equal to 10 power x, and let us take the y value 100 and let us ask the question, what is the corresponding x value. So, to find the corresponding x value, you draw a line to the curve, you draw a line to the 10 power x curve, line parallel to x axis, and then draw a perpendicular line to touch the x axis. So, this says that for 100, the corresponding x value is 2. When the y value is 100, the corresponding x value is 2. Similarly, this point is 10, which is the middle of between 0 and 20, this is 10. When the y value is 10, the corresponding x value is 1, which we actually know very well. We know that y is equal to 10 power x, when if x equal to 1, y is 10 power 1 equal to 10. So, which is as we seen in the graph. Similarly, if x equal to 2, y is 10 power 2 equal to 100. So, if the y value is 100, the corresponding x value is 2. If the y value is 10, the corresponding x value is 1. So, this is what basically we know, and but to calculate this, the function which inverts this graph, this is called inverting, is essentially log of y. So, if we calculate the log of y, we will get x. So, there is a 10 here. So, this is called log to the base 10. If we use this 10 power x curve as the reference curve, then we call it log to the base 10. So, log to the base 10 of y will give you the x. If y is equal to 10 power x, if you calculate the log of y, we will get x. So, let us see this. So, log of to the base 10 of 100 is 2. This is something that you know, log of 100 is 2. So, if you take 100 and draw a curve and calculate the corresponding x value, this is 2. So, you might have seen this log, the logarithm in different contexts in biology. What does it convey essentially is this, that if you had a 10 power x curve and if we know the y value, log essentially calculates the x value. So, any log value, if you want to calculate the log of something, the right one way to do is that you plot y equal to 10 power x graph, find that value on the y axis, draw lines, and wherever it hits the x axis, you get the value which is log of that. Let us for example, just like we saw here, if this is y equal to 10 power x, any value, let us say this is 23. If you want to calculate the log of 23, so this is x, this is y, and this curve is y equal to 10 power x. And if you want to calculate the log of 23, draw a line which and wherever it hits 10 power x curve, bring it down, and this value is log of 23. Log of 23 to the base 10. So, log 10 as it is written in the slide here, log 10 is often written as simply log. So, when you see log of something, most often it is log to the base 10. That is, you are calculating what is the x value corresponding to the y value if you take this 10 power x curve as a base curve and then draw such lines. This is what logarithm gives. Similarly, you could ask this question, instead of this 10 power x as the base curve, if you had e power x as the base curve, what will be the corresponding y value? So, let us say instead of 10 power x, you had, so this is x, this is y, this is y equal to e power x, and if you take a y value and calculate the corresponding x value, this is also a logarithm, but you call it log to the base e. So, let us say this is 51. So, this value is 51 here, and if you draw such a line and calculate the corresponding x value, you call it log of 51 to the base e. So, just like log of, you can take any curve you want as your base curve, 2 power x, 3 power x, 4 power x, 5 power x, and you can calculate, take a y value and calculate the corresponding x value, and you can call it a log to the base whatever curve you take. So, it could have log to the base 2, log to the base 3, log to the base 4. So, most often used things are log to the base e and log to the base 10. So, let us look the next slide here. So, if you take y equal to e power x, the x value is obtained by calculating the log of this y value to the base e, and log e is often written as ln, ln. This is read as ln. So, ln e, ln y, when you say somebody says ln y, what they are saying is basically they have a y value and they want to calculate the corresponding x value. If you draw a line to the e power x curve, we want to calculate the corresponding x value. Now, if you have many numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you want to calculate log of each of these quantities and plot them. So, you get a function, that function is called logarithmic function, and let us see how does it look like. So, what is plotted here is y equal to log x. So, for each x value, you have a corresponding y value here. So, one interesting thing you should note here is that if the x axis goes to, if you look the values in the x axis, it is like 1, it is like 30,000, 60,000, 90,000. So, it is huge values, but the corresponding y value is 3, 4, 5. So, if you calculate the log of huge values, it appears that you get a small value, which is true. So, if you the log of big number is actually a small number. This is log of 90,000 is somewhere very close to 5, just between 4.5 and 5. You know that similar. So, this is one thing you should keep in mind, that if you take a huge number and calculate the log, you will get a small number. This idea that log of big number is a small number is very often used. This property is often used to plot graphs, because it is very convenient to write small numbers. So, very often you will see log plots. So, the reason why you have log plots is something related to this, which we will come when we see we will discuss a log plot, but just keep in mind that log of a huge big number is a small number. Log of 100 is just 2 log of. So, let us write log of some huge numbers. So, log of 10 is 1, log of 100 is 2, log of 1000 is 3, log of 10,000 is 4. You all know this. Log of 10, So, 10,000 is 10 power 4 and 10 power 5 is 5, log of 10 power 6, it is a huge number, is a million, is just 6. So, log of a million is 6. So, just remember that log of huge number is a small number, and we will be using this property at some point in this course. So, now what is the use of this log? Like as you see here in this slide, if you remember, many of you might have learned this Beer-Lambert law, which is basically a law that relates absorbance of. So, if you have a liquid and you shine light on this liquid, the amount of light absorbed is basically related to the intensity of incident light and transmitted light. So, if you have I and I 0, which is intensity of incident light and transmitted light, the absorbent is basically the logarithm of this ratio. So, this is some natural property. You all might have learned that absorbance, like how much a liquid absorbs the light, how much given a liquid, how much of light it can absorb. The absorbance is essentially is logarithmically related to the ratio of intensity of transmitted and incident lights. So, here is an example, a natural phenomena which is absorbance, which behaves like a mathematical function. So, this is interesting, isn't it? Natural phenomena like absorbance behaves like a mathematical function. In the last lecture, we saw that bacterial growth, the number of bacteria after a time t is given by a function 2 power x. So, the bacterial colony behaves as if it is like a mathematical function 2 power x. Similarly, here you have a natural phenomena which is absorbance of light, which behaves as if it is a mathematical function. Think about it, this is very intriguing and then and interesting. So, this is why we learn mathematics and the function for various functions, because all of this represent some natural phenomena or the other. So, to summarize this function part, let us say that many natural phenomena like absorbance and bacterial growth behave like mathematical functions, and we learned many functions so far, and we will go to a new section now, which is called the derivatives. So, what we will discuss now is the idea of derivatives. So, we will discuss what is derivative. This is a part of mathematics called calculus, which is very useful in understanding many things that we see in nature. As you all might know, like Isaac Newton is one of the early persons who actually developed the calculus as we know it today. Even many people in India, it appeared that knew some idea about calculus at very early stage. However, as the calculus that we learn today is basically derived by Isaac Newton and many other scientists. So, we will learn the idea of derivatives and how it is useful, and we will go into the calculus the later part. As we go into other parts of calculus, we will discuss more about this. And so, let us start with an example. So, we had mentioned about this example of molecular motor walking along microtubule. So, in cells, from the center of the cell to the periphery, there are microtubules, and molecular motors like kinesin walk along this microtubule. And at some point, in some regime, if you look at the position of kinesin with time, it may look like what we discussed, it may look like something like this at some particular regime. It is not always it will look like this, but at some regime it could look like this, where if you plot the position on the y axis and the time on the x axis, it could look like a straight line. So, and we said that y is equal to v t plus c is some equation for this, and v is the velocity. So, in other words, when we said all this, unknowingly we use the idea of velocity. So, what is the idea of velocity? If we know the position which as a function of time, for different value of time, if we know the position, we can calculate the velocity or speed. Think about, instead of molecular motor, think about you walking somewhere, you walking along a road, and you know the position, like at t equal to, when it is 3 o'clock, you start from your home, and when it is 3:10, you reach your college. So, in that 10 minutes of time, you know the distance you traveled. So, if you know the distance you traveled and the time taken for traveling, you know how to calculate the speed or the velocity. So, this idea is related to the function, which is the function here is the position, like the position of a molecular motor or the position you were traveling. So, this, if you know the position and time, we can calculate velocity. So, let us look at this slide where the simple equation for velocity is change in distance by change in time. How much distance you moved in a time, when the time changed by a certain amount. If you just say that the distance you moved is dy in a time dt, the velocity or speed is nothing but dy by dt. You all know this. This is you learned in school that the velocity is dy by dt, or the change in distance by change in time gives you the speed or the velocity. So, using this we can calculate the velocity of molecular motors or velocity of you walking, and known, if it is a simple graph like linear graph, the calculating velocity is easy. If it is not so simple graph, it is slightly complicated. So, we will come to each of this, but by calculating this dy by dt or this change in distance by change in time, what we are calculating is nothing but some quantity called slope. So, let us look at what is slope. So, the slope is nothing but how y changes with x. If we have a small change in x dx, how much the y will change. So, let us look this graph carefully. Let us look, this is, you start from this value of x and the corresponding y value is this. You move along the x axis certain small distance dx and see how much the y value changed. The corresponding y value is this. So, if you moved a distance along the x axis, the corresponding y value also changed by certain amount dy, and this ratio dy by dx is called slope. It is also called derivative of y. So, we will come to this, we will discuss this derivative name later, but just understand for the moment that finding derivative of a function is nothing but calculating the slope. So, in the, as you see in this here, calculating dy by dx, how much the y changes when you change x, it is calculating the slope. So, you calculate the slope of this straight line. So, finding derivative of a function is nothing but calculating the slope of the function, and this is very useful. So, if you calculate the slope of this position time curve that we saw in the previous graph, you will get the velocity. So, now let us understand this a little more carefully by calculating slope of some known curves. So, we know many functions. We know y equal to x curve, vi equal to x square. So, let us calculate the slope of certain curves that we know, and let us see what we learn from this, and later all this what we learn can be used in in the context of biology. So, let us take this y equal to x curve. So, see this graph, the blue line is nothing but y equal to x. Now, if we want to calculate the slope of y equal to x curve, draw a line like this, starting from the x axis, calculating the corresponding value of y and another value at x axis. So, if you start two lines from 3 and 4, it ends up in 3 and 4 here. That is, if you change the value from 3 to y, the x value 3 to 4, the y corresponding y value also changes from 3 to 4. So, the dx, so let us look at this. If you change the x value, so x was 3 here, the second x value is 4, the y value corresponding to this x value, that is y 1, which is the corresponding to the x 1 value, y 1 is also 3 and y 2 is also 4. So, as you saw in this curve here, so this is x and this is y, this is dx and this is dy. If this is 3 and this is also 3, for this is if this is y equal to x curve, this is 3 and this is also 3, this is 4, this is also 4, this point is 4, this point is 4, this is 3, this is 3. So, the dy here is 1, 4 minus 3. So, dy is y, so this is y 2, dy is y 2 minus y 1 is 1, dx is x 2 minus x 1 is 1. So, let us have a look at this graph once more. So, this dy by dx, which is how much y changes when you change x by a certain amount, dx is called the slope, and if you calculate for this curve, you will get that dy by dx is 1. So, if you take the y equal to x curve and calculate dy by dx, you will find that dy by dx is 1. So, take it as an assignment as to calculate dy by dx. Plot yourself a y equal to x curve on a graph sheet. Take some small interval dx here and see what is the corresponding dy interval, and you will find that they are equal, dy equal to dx. In other words, dy by dx equal to 1. So, you will find if y equal to x, you will find that dy equal to dx. In other words, this implies that dy by dx is 1. This is simple plotting, just plot it and see. There is nothing more than plotting here. Just plot and look at this interval dx and look at this interval dy. This is 3 and 4, this is also 3 and 4. So, this interval is 1, this interval is 1. So, dy by dx is just 1. Now, instead of taking 3 and 4, let us take 7 and 8 as you see here. If you plot a line from 7, you end up in 7. You plot a line from 8, the corresponding y value is 8. So, 8 minus 7 is 1. Here also 8 minus 7 is 1. So, dx, the change in x here is 1, the change in y here is also 1. So, dy by dx is 1. Whatever be the x value, 2 x values you take, so if you just take any interval on this curve and calculate the corresponding y interval, you will always get the same, that is dy by dx is 1 and it is independent of whatever x value you take. So, this is how we calculate the slope. So, you all know how to calculate the slope. So, this thing, the calculating the slope is called calculating the derivative. So, we can say the derivative of y equal to x is 1. So, what we are saying here is that derivative of y equal to x curve is 1, or derivative of y equal to x function is 1. It is a number, it is independent of x. We will see some quantities which is dependent on x, and we will see how this is useful soon, but just understand that you take y equal to x curve and calculate the slope, you will get 1. Now, let us take the y equal to 2 x curve, have a look at this. So, similar, just like what we did before, let us start from 3 and calculate the corresponding y value. So, the function here is y equal to 2 x. So, since the y is twice the x, if you have 3 you get 6, and if you have 4 as the x value, the corresponding y value is 8. Now, you calculate the dx, the change in x. If you go from 3 to 4, the change is 1. If you go along the x axis and if you change this x value by 1, the corresponding y value will be changed by 2. So, 6 to 8, the y value was 6 here, it became 8 here. So, 3 to 4, 6 to 8. So, dy is 2, dx is 1. So, let us understand this. So, for y equal to 2 x, y equal to 2 x. So, for y equal to 2 x, if you plot, this is 3 and 4 and the corresponding values are 6 and 8. So, this quantity is 1, the difference 4 minus 3 equal to 1. Here this difference is 8 minus 6 equal to 2. This difference is 2. So, the change in, so let me call this dx, which is the change in x, which is 4 minus 3, and this is dy, which is 8 minus 6, and dy by dx is 2 by 1, 8 minus 6 by 4 minus 3, which is 2 by 1, which is nothing but 2. So, the derivative of y equal to 2 x is 2. We did not learn any fancy technique, we just used something that we know. We just know how to plot functions. If you want to calculate y equal to 2 x derivative, what you have to do is very simple. Just plot it on a graph, calculate the slope, take a x interval and calculate what is the corresponding y interval. If you can plot and do this much, you get some number, and that is basically the derivative here. So, now let us see, instead of, we took 3 and 4 as we see here, 3 and 4 and you got 6 and 8. Let us take 7 and 8, just like we did the previous case. If we take 7 as x value, the corresponding y value is twice 7 is 14. If you take 8 as the x value, the corresponding y value is 16. So, the change in x is 8 minus 7, which is 1. The change in y is 16 minus 14, which is 2. So, the dy by dx is again 2 here. So, whether you calculate it here or you calculate it here, you always get the answer 2, which says that the slope or the derivative is independent of where on x axis you would start from. So, this is independent of x. So, 2, the number 2 is surely independent of x is a constant. It does not matter where you start on the x axis, wherever you calculate, you can take any 2 points on the x axis and calculate the corresponding points on the y axis, you will always get 2 for this y equal to 2 x curve. So, if the function is y equal to 2 x, the derivative is 2. So, this is we learn this just by plotting. We have not yet learned the formula for derivative or the technique of calculating the derivative, which we will come. But so far we know that by just calculating, just by plotting it on a graph, we can calculate the slope, and the slope essentially gives you, slope is nothing but the derivative. What we call derivative is nothing but the slope. So, we call slope as the slope as derivative. So, now let us have a look at a small movie. So, there are two curves here, y equal to x and y equal to 2x. And let us start from 3 and 4 and draw two lines and see what is the corresponding x values. So, if the x values are 3 and 4, let us calculate what is the corresponding y values. So, if you draw two lines to y equal to 2x curve, the corresponding y value will be 6 and 8. So, 3 and 4, 6 and 8. So, 2 times 3 is 6, 2 times 4 is 8. So, if you take y equal to 2x curve and I ask the question that if the dx is 4 minus 3, the change in x is 1. So, if the x changes from 3 to 4, the corresponding y will change from 6 to 8. On the other hand, if you draw this line only up to this x axis, if you ask this question, if you take this y equal to x curve, how much will the y change? You will see that y only changes by a small amount. So, you can see this is bigger than this. If the x is changed by the same quantity, the change in y is more for this curve compared to this curve. So, the slope of y equal to 2x is bigger than y equal to x. As we saw, the slope of y equal to 2x is 2, or the derivative of y equal to 2x is 2, and the slope of y equal to x is 1. So, that is, you will see that 3 4 here, 3 4 here. So, the dy is 1, dx is 1, dy by dx is equal to 1 for this curve, dy is 1, the corresponding dx is 1, the corresponding dy is 2 here. So, dy by dx is 2 for this curve. So, the slope for the larger the slope, the larger the derivative, and this is let me play this movie once more. Let us see this. I am starting from 3 4 and drawing perpendicular lines to y equal to the y equal to 2x curve, and ask the question, what is the corresponding y value. For y equal to 2x, the corresponding y value for 3 and 4 is 6 and 8. If you do this for y equal to x, the corresponding y value is 3 4 itself. So, now if you calculate the slope or the derivative dy by dx, you will get a bigger number here, because see, even though the change in x is same, the change in y is different. This has a bigger change here compared to this. So, this idea that the change in y will be bigger if the slope is bigger, and this idea is useful. This is useful in many contexts. We will learn this. The speed could be bigger, many other quantities could be bigger. We will come back to the examples where this is relevant. But so far, when we learn y equal to x and y equal to 2x, we saw that whatever value, wherever you take this start from x axis, the slope was the same. Now, let us take an example where this is not true. So, let us look at this next case, which is y equal to x square. So, if you take this y equal to x curve, the blue curve here is y equal to x square. In this blue curve, let us start from 3 4 and draw two lines, perpendicular lines, and calculate the corresponding y values. So, since this is y value is the square of x value, the square of 3 is 9, the square of 4 is 16. So, let us try and understand this. So, have a look at this. So, you have a curve which is y equal to x square. So, we have 3 here, the corresponding value is 9, 3 square, and if we have 4 here, the corresponding value is 16. Now, let us calculate dy by dx. So, what is dy by dx? What is dx? So, dx is nothing but this amount. How much is change in this is dx? This is nothing but 4 minus 3, which is 1. So, the dx is 1. Now, what is the dy? The dy is this amount, this much is the dy. this much is the dy, dy is 16 minus 9, which is 7. So, so the value we got 7. So, the dy by dx is dy by dx. So, let us calculate here dy by dx, which is 7, which is dy. This is dy is 7 and dx is 1. This is 7. So, we found that the dy by dx is 7 here when we calculated. So, now let us go to another place. Let us have a look at this. Let us now take this, start from 7 and 8. So, the square of 7 is 49. So, the square of 8 is 64. So, now in this case let us calculate the dy by dx. So, again the dx is 1, you went from 7 to 8, the x is only changed by 1, the x is increased by 1, but the corresponding y value was increased by 15, 49 to 64. Let us have a look at here. So, if we had this curve little more here, if we start from some value 7, we reach 49. If we start from 8, we reached 64. So, this dx was 1, the dy was 15. So, this is 1. So, the dy by dx, so the dy which is 15 by dx which is 1. So, the dy by dx is 15 by 1 is 15. So, dy by dx is 15. So, you got 7 in the previous case and 15 here. So, depending on the x value wherever you calculate, we got different answers. So, we got when we took the x value between 3 and 4, we got the corresponding y values between 9 and 16. When we took the x values between 7 and 8, we got 49 and 64, which is 15 difference. So, what we should learn here is that the slope of this y equal to x square curve varies as we go along the x axis. The slope here is small compared to the slope here. In other words, the slope here is larger compared to the slope here. The slope here is 15 as we saw, and the slope here is just 7. So, the slope as we go along the x axis, we calculate the slope here, it will be larger than the slope at some other point at the bottom. So, the slope of y equal to x square curve increases with x. So, this is something which we learn from just by drawing, we learned some idea. We learn that slope of y equal to x square curve increases with x. In other words, slope is proportional to x. The x increases, the slope increases, and we will learn this. And so, that means the derivative of y equal to x square is proportional to x. So, it turns out that the slope of x square is 2 x. In other words, the derivative of x square is 2 x as we see here. We will see how we understand this. So, we will see what does it mean in the next class. So, but at this point just understand that the slope here is not independent of x, it depends on the value of x. It is unlike the y equal to x and y equal to 2 x. So, now let us summarize what we learned today. So, we learned that finding derivative of a function is nothing but calculating how the y changes with x, and the slope of a function is nothing but dy by dx. How much the change in y if the change in x is dx. So, if the change in x is dx and if the corresponding change in y is dy, their ratio gives the slope or the derivative. And in most physical situations, the slope of a function represents a physical quantity. For example, the velocity, if you just when you are walking or moving with some along a line, or if you know the position versus time, if you know the position as a function of time, the slope of it gives the velocity or the speed. Now, we will come and learn many more examples and the idea of derivatives in a much more better way in the next class. But the aim of this class is just to introduce you the idea of derivative and the way to calculate derivative. The way to calculate the derivative, as we saw, is nothing but plot the function, calculate a dx and calculate the corresponding dy, and calculate the dy by dx. In other words, calculate the slope. Slope equal to derivative is the thing that we learned today, and in the next class we will take more examples and get into detail and learn how to calculate derivatives of different functions and why we should calculate the derivative at all, and what we learn by calculating the derivatives. The use of these derivatives will also we will discuss as we go along. Let us stop here today. Thank you.